Hello and welcome back to another video. So in this video, you are going to be exploring the journey of the Ghanaian cedi and economy after the first president, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, was overthrown to 1983 under the governance of Jerry John Rawlings. Let's get into the video. Ghana was a country with one of the strongest currencies and economies in the world. After all, it was the leading producer of cocoa, producing about 50% of the entire world's cocoa yield. But only 20 years later, the country was almost bankrupt. Its national debt was nearing $1 billion and it had exhausted almost all of its foreign reserves. In 1966, a group of military officers overthrew Nkrumah and inherited a nearly bankrupt country. They had to address inflation, food shortages, and unemployment, especially for school leavers. And because the country was effectively broke, they had no option than to turn to the IMF for financial support. And going to the IMF means getting some of the resources you need to be used under very strict conditions. While these resources helped the country, it could not eliminate the national debt, and the best they could do was reschedule about $500 million to a later time. And the assistance the nation received was somewhere around the $70 million mark. And as one of the conditions and economic assistance the IMF was lending to Ghana, they advised that the government devalue the Ghanaian cedi by 30%, reduce the government expenditure, and also privatize state-owned enterprises. The devaluation of the cedi was meant to make Ghanaian exports more competitive. By competitive, I mean cheaper in the international market, and make the import of goods into the country much harder and expensive. So these measures in the short term helped boost the gold and mining industries in Ghana, and the privatization of the state-owned enterprises also meant closing a lot of the projects and programs Nkrumah had established. This led to they putting most of those projects on sale and eventually only selling 3. While they kept shutting down the industries that were established under Nkrumah, they did not really provide an alternative vision on how to participate in the economy. So the public grew increasingly dissatisfied with the government. On September 1969, the NLC sponsored a competitive election and Dr. Kofi Busia emerged the new prime minister of the country. 18th November 1969, the Busia administration passed the Aliens Compliance Order, which required all foreign nationals who were working in Ghana illegally to leave the country in a very short period of time. So during this period, around 500 to 1 million foreigners were asked to leave the country, most of whom were Nigerians. So take note of this, it becomes important very soon in the video. Much of the NLC rhetoric of turning away from the Nkrumah projects continued. And at this point, the prices of cocoa were at a historic high and the nation was beginning to cash in on some of the dough. The government then embarked on some developmental projects in the agric sector to stimulate economic growth. But these local successes did not actually affect the macroeconomic state of Ghana. The debt was still increasing and they hadn't really found a way to increase the foreign reserves. So in 1971, after the prices of the cocoa were at historic heights, the country was faced with another in the continuing series of balance of payments crisis. And to address this, they implemented a whopping 44% currency devaluation, only to be overthrown a few days later by Ignatius Kutu Acheampong.
The government is a military government which will rule with advice from certain eminent civilians in the country. I would like to emphasize immediately that this coup was not initiated by the armed forces merely to satisfy our selfish ends. As I said in my earlier broadcasts, the takeover was occasioned principally by the hypocrisy of the Busia regime, coupled with the inefficient management by that regime of our economy.
And very quickly, the NRC revalued the cedi and used administrative measures to control the foreign exchange problem. The decision to revalue the cedi was very misguided, as it led to the overvaluation of the cedi and eventually to the crippling of the Ghanaian economy. Hyperinflation and currency devaluation made access to basic necessities very hard, and as a result, black markets, which are locally known as kalabule, emerged, where goods were sold at approximately 20 times higher than the official government-controlled prices. The black market was the only viable choice for most Ghanaians. So at this point, you can tell Ghanaians were actually suffering. And to address this, the government launched Operation Feed Yourself. This was an operation to help Ghanaians be self-sustaining and produce their own food. And in one of the craziest moves the country had ever seen, the leader of the country decided to reject most of the debts the country owed. He decided it wasn't his problem and he wasn't going to pay for the debts that were mostly accumulated under Nkrumah's time. And this obviously was a bad idea. This, coupled with the political instability in the country, led to the loss of investor confidence and the further decline of the Ghanaian economy. It's crazy. And in the move that he surely did not expect, he was ousted by one of his own party members, Fred Ekufu. Fred Ekufu came to power in July 1978. Ekufu's barely 1-year tenure was marked by efforts to stabilize the economy, combat corruption, and return to civilian rule. However, his efforts were largely unsuccessful due to the economic state of the country and public dissatisfaction. So on June 4, 1979, Flight Lieutenant Jerry Rawlings took over control of the country in another coup.
It is nearly 1 month now since, by the spontaneous action of the junior officers and men of the Ghana Armed Forces, the government of the Supreme Military Council was overthrown and the Armed Forces Revolutionary Council was established. That action represented a revolt of the ordinary Ghanaian against social injustice, against economic hardship, and against the cancer of corruption that had eaten deep into the fabric of our society.
He didn't really have any economic policies to make the country better, but he had force. So his deal was trying to mechanically or manually lower the prices of goods. He did this by enforcing brutal means onto traders and entrepreneurs who he perceived to be hoarding goods or overpricing their goods on the market. He had a populist agenda and believed everybody should enjoy the resources that were available in the country. And at one point, he went as far as destroying a trading center which had been in operation in Ghana for over 50 years, the Makola No. 1 market. It is estimated that about 2 million Ghanaians fled the country for greener pastures in neighboring countries. Ghana had completely transitioned from a prospering middle-income developing country with high hopes into a nation suffering from fourth world poverty. An election was held later and power was handed to Dr. Hela Liman to attempt to save the country.
Now that the people of Ghana have democratically elected me, their president, I call on all, in the true spirit of patriotism, to come together as one united country, determined to solve the many and difficult problems facing us. Let us marshal the rich human resources available throughout the country, and together march forward in unity and service to the nation.
Obviously, he faced the same problems, and with limited financial resources and nowhere to turn to, the Ghanaian government always has that one sneaky link to go back to. So they went back to the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. However, the resources did not have the desired effect the government hoped it would. So with the nation facing disastrous conditions, Jerry John Rawlings initiated the final coup yet on December 31st, 1981.
The President, the Vice President, and all ministers and their deputies are dismissed from office. B. Parliament is dissolved. C. The Council of State is abolished. D. All political parties are proscribed.
Ghana, 31st December 1981.
Today, we initiated a holy war
Flight Lieutenant Jerry Rawlings stages his second coup.
If you looked at the macroeconomic indicators, you could tell that Ghana was a hopeless case. Per capita income, which was about 640 cedis in 1971, was now 460 cedis in 1981. Every organization from government to private sectors, including voluntary organizations like churches, had run to a near standstill because of a lack of resources to fund their basic everyday operations. His government would often use blatant physical force to coerce traders to make goods available at a controlled price. So in 1983, which most Ghanaians today who lived then remember as one of the worst, if not the worst time in Ghanaian history, the country experienced a drought which significantly decreased the agricultural production of the country. And also, this was the time of the infamous Ghana Must Go era in Nigeria. The Busia administration passed the Aliens Compliance Order, which required 1 million foreigners to leave the country, most of whom were Nigerians. And also, this was the time of the infamous Ghana Must Go era in Nigeria, where over 1 million Ghanaians were deported back into an already struggling Ghanaian country. And of course, the government, seeing this, knew their sneaky link was waiting. So they went again to the IMF for support. But for some reason, the economic assistance from the IMF plus the sheer brutal force the Rawlings administration was enforcing, the economic policies kind of worked, especially given that the economy had all but collapsed. And at this point, the exchange rate was about 30 cedis to $1. And the country, which was supposedly the hope of Africa, with one of the strongest currencies and economies, had fallen to an all-time low. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Share your thoughts in the comments. Let me know if there was anything I missed. And be sure to turn the post notifications on so you know or you are alerted when I post a new video this Friday or anytime sooner. Thank you, and I'll see you another time. Bye.